Die Isarrunde.
Der Web-TV-Talk aus dem Herzen Münchens.
Aus dem Herzen Münchens.
Die Isarrunde.
This is a very special Isarrunde. We're sitting together with Matt from Etsy, he's our guest. Welcome. Thanks for having you here. And we're talking about the mass of niches. We're talking about the role of community in retail and in I think in any company. You used to be the vice president of community at Etsy in New York. Correct. Now you moved to Berlin to open an office here. So maybe you should just give it a small introduction. What is Etsy doing?
Sure. Etsy is an online marketplace for buying and selling handmade goods. We also have a small vintage marketplace. But it's all actually about empowering individual makers and collectors. So every product comes directly from the person who's made it. So there's no reselling allowed. It's not like a big company that's going to Africa and buying a bunch of beads and reselling them to consumers in the West. It's actually about that direct connection between the producer and the consumer. And that's a very central idea to Etsy. We're based in Brooklyn, New York, and now in a small office in Berlin, and actually also just as of a couple days ago, a small office in California. And we started about 5 years ago, not quite. And just to give you kind of a sense of our trajectory, in 2006 we did about $7 million in sales, and 2007 $27 million, 2008 $90 million, and last year $190 million. So it's growing. It's growing. Yeah. And what's great about that too is actually, you know, that's 96.5% of that money is going back to individual makers, mostly women who are running their own businesses from their homes.
Cool. Yeah, cool. If I compare this to eBay, so people started selling their products, maybe also handmade products, things they did by their hands, on eBay. So, and eBay is not that community-based as Etsy.
I think that's one of the differences. I mean, there's some very basic ones, like everything's fixed price on Etsy. There's no auctions. You know, but I think that initially, there's a book called The Perfect Store about eBay, which I really highly recommend to anyone who's interested in this space. But you know, I think they really kind of started out as a community-focused company in many ways. It was about that collector, and it was about that person who had that one special thing that they could share with another person who wanted that one special thing. And I think that's a very central idea to Etsy. I think at a certain point, eBay became a big business, and it stopped focusing on the individual, and it started focusing on, well, how can a giant retail chain like Best Buy get rid of unwanted stereo equipment, or, you know, and it stopped being about the individual and that special thing that they covet, that treasured item, and started being more about, like, well, how can our quarterly earnings be this, and how can they be that? And at a certain point, you know, they made more money from a big corporate client than they did from an individual, and their focus shifted to the big corporate client. You know, for Etsy, we put the individual at the very center of the company. So, I mean, we do a lot to get a lot of individuals together and form groups, but you know, at the end of the day, you know, what's important to us is who's making something, how it's being made, and not what they're making as much. So it's really about, you know, even as Etsy grows, we still see it being a marketplace for micro producers, for individuals.
But still, with $200 million revenues, how do you prevent yourself from becoming a big company?
It's a good question. I mean, and it's something that we certainly talk about and think about a lot. And you know, one of our big challenges right now is to grow big and stay small. And this is stay small in the sense of how do we speak with our customers? What kind of relationships do we have with them? How do we treat our employees? What are our values as a business? And we think that we can do it by, one, remaining totally transparent and open, which we've always been from the beginning as a company. Every month we publish all of our stats for anyone who wants to see them, all of our financial data, everything that anyone would want to know, because we think of our artists as our partners in this business. So we want to let them know how our business is doing. We always make ourselves available. We have weekly community chats where anyone can come and ask us anything they want about Etsy. You came to an event last night here in Munich. So whenever I'm traveling, you know, I'm always anywhere I go, I'll gather with a group of people and tell them, like, here's what we're doing, here's what's going on. Rob Kalin, who's our CEO, publishes a roadmap every couple of months of, like, here's what we're working on, this is where we think we're going. So I think that's, you know, one way that we can kind of grow big and stay small is keep doing that. I think another really important thing to, you know, staying small while growing big is something that's also been an important part of Etsy from the beginning, and it's about leaving money on the table if it gets in the way of your customer experience and of your values. So there's a lot of other ways we could be monetizing the site. There's a lot of other things we could do with an audience of our size, but we want to focus on actually, you know, empowering individuals. And so we think that if we stay true to the kind of founding principles and not try to be like, oh, we could squeeze out, I mean, look at eBay, it's a perfect example. Well, if we add 50 cents to bold the title, or we add 50 cents to do this and this, we can, you know, increase our, you know, our gross merchandise, blah, 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 you know, to this point. And we're saying that, well, you know, work on building something that's different and something that's real, and the money will follow in some way. So we have investors. We're a for-profit company, but we don't think about, you know, we don't look at how we can be maximizing profits at all turns. We look at how we can be maximizing experiences on the site.
But isn't that kind of hard to explain, to leave the money on the table to your investors?
I think it would be hard to explain to some investors. I think we have really great investors, and I think we got people involved in the company who have been there before, who understand those things. So our board is kind of like an all-star board of the web. It's Katarina Fake, who founded Flickr. It's Fred Wilson, who's a really interesting and incredibly intelligent venture capitalist in New York, Union Square Ventures. And it's Jim Breyer from Excel, who is also one of the smartest people we know. And they're really, and Rob Kalin, who's our CEO. And they're really, you know, they're really hands-on, and they're not hands-on in the way like, you know, what were the quarterly reports? It was like, you know, like how can we make the site more social? Like how can we make the site, you know, be a different kind of company? And they're never saying like, you're not making enough money, you're not doing this. So I think that that's a pretty rare and special thing to have, a group of investors who have a lot of expertise and aren't only focused on money.
I think you mentioned you mentioned two very important points: the new kind of openness for companies, and the second one is to be a platform. You just mentioned Best Buy, which is serving the mass market, and you are serving a mass of niches.
Well, I mean, it's a good question. I don't think it's, you know, necessarily right for every single company, but I do think that any sort of consumer business has to focus on their audience and their community and have a conversation with them. There's no longer, you know, you can think actually not even just consumer businesses, entertainment. You know, at one point, right, there was maybe 3 television channels in Germany, right, and they decided what the programming was, and all of Germany watched those channels because there were no other options, right? Now there's a million options for anything from, you know, getting that one of a kind, a custom item custom made for you on Etsy to, you know, YouTube, to watching movies, whatever you want. And the point is that you can't tell the consumer anymore what to consume. They're going to consume what they want. So you have to kind of invite them in and help create that experience for them. That's what they want. And you know, I think that the days of, you know, like the Gap saying, well, this season it's going to be about blue sweaters, and we're going to actually ban your 400 million blue sweaters, and everyone's going to wear a blue sweater. Like, you can't do that anymore. So you even see big brands like Nike or someone trying to, you know, you can custom make your sneakers, and it's still being...
Isn't that the problem? So what Nike is doing, they try to custom make the sneakers themselves. So they have to do it, and
it's still being made, and you know, there's still some worker in a factory like, God damn, this person wanted these.
And isn't it the problem that the big companies are seeing, okay, we have to go for niches, but that's not the way. So it's not getting the big companies to niches. It's more like building the platform for others to sell their products in a niche.
Well, that's what works wonderfully for Etsy, and we think about it, you know, this way, that it's like our brand is a million small brands together, and like we're this idea of you know, all of these individual things, and we're more of a concept than a single brand. And because of that, you know, we don't We don't have warehouses, we don't have manufacturing, we don't have all of these other challenges that a big giant company like Nike has, right? So they've got their production, they've got their distribution, and that's to me, an older way of doing business, and a very expensive one, and a very costly one for the planet too. I don't think it's so sustainable. And so I think it's more about micro producers and micro economies, but you can't just say that to like Nike all of a sudden, like, you know, I'm going to start making my tennis shoes. Like, it would be cool, but, you know, so I think it's, you know, it's not like a company could just all of a sudden become that other thing if they wanted to, but I do think that there's lessons that can be learned.
There have been a few small disappointments for users regarding trademark inquiries, like from Jack Wolfskin or Gabor. So what can Etsy do about this?
I mean, there's a lot of interesting issues that come up when you talk about intellectual property and trademark and copyright and all of those things. You know, and I'll kind of try to address them separately. One, you know, certainly there's the intellectual property of the makers, who are the individuals who are creating something, and we see then a big brand come and co-opt that and take that and be like, wow, look what this is doing really well on Etsy. Let's mass produce this and put it in Urban Outfitters or whatever it may be. And then you have kind of the opposite, which is the big company coming and looking around on Etsy and saying that person's violating this trademark, or they're not a license holder for that. So from a, you know, just policy point of view, we are completely compliant with the DMCA, which is the Digital Millennial Copyright Act. And so if you're the copyright holder of something and you find someone who's violating your copy mark or your trademark or your copyright on Etsy, then we'll remove the product. And at the same time, you can file a countersuit as a person saying, actually, I do have the right to use this, and we'll put it back up. So we make our lives very difficult for our in-house attorney, but we try to defend the rights of artists as much as we can, as well as being totally compliant with whatever laws there may be. The interesting thing for me actually is when you mentioned this. Maybe this Gerber instant isn't the best, but you do actually get people who are diehard fans of something on Etsy creating fan art that's like, I love the Twilight movies, and they make these beautiful like handmade paintings of the stars of Twilight, and then the copyright owner of Twilight comes in and is like, get that off the site, and you're breaking their fans' hearts. And it's like, these are the people who are buying all of your stuff, who are going to all of the movies, who are so engaged around your brand. And then you have someone saying, like, you have a team of lawyers scaring the hell out of this, 20-year-old woman in Cleveland, Ohio, who just really loves your movies. And so I think that there's missed opportunities there.
So, you just opened your office in Berlin, so you're an open company, you said, so if people want to see your office,
they can come by anytime.
Just insert your Twitter account. So.
My email is matt@etsy.com.
So awesome discussion. I like the idea of an open company, very transparent.
Yeah,
so
I think there's
a great chance, if you want to learn, if you want to listen from Etsy, I think there's now the opportunity to go to Berlin, to meet Matt and his colleagues. And thanks for having me here.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Great to be here.
Thank you. And a safe trip to New York.
Thank you.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Okay. Sounds good.